So I remember staying home sick from school quite often as a kid. I was never one to stay still in bed, no matter how awful I felt. So I would remain, so I'd not remain in bed at all. So I'd just roam around my room with Dora the Explorer playing in the background. And I'd scrounge through my arts and craft supplies, try and think of things to make. And since I like being at home by myself often, and so being away from school was not a huge problem for me. And the person who would get me out of my head and into the world and to interact was my grandmother. And I had no problem connecting with her, even though I had trouble connecting with other people. I was often left to myself. Since I'm a middle child, I have an older brother who has severe autism, and at the time I had a newborn baby brother. So my nanu took it upon herself to raise me until I was 7. And after that, after I turned 7, I think if I remember correctly, right after I turned 7, my nanu moved to New York City, so to be with my aunt. So on the days that I stayed home sick, I remember my nanu and I sitting in the sunlight, but by the veranda doors, uh, with my arts and craft supplies sprawled out in front of us, and she would always choose the green, orange, and red pencil crayons to to use to draw. And she would draw each line very intricately, and I would sit by her side, stay very quiet, and study each line she made. So we would doodle and make drawings of mangoes, guavas, giraffes, and Snoopy from the Peanuts gang. And as we sat on the floor with my art supplies, um, she, she when my grandmother was, we would just, talk everything out and share what was in our minds, what was in our, what we were doing, and just going through the process of creating, because this was important for my grandmother to have this sort of process. As she was an artist herself, she was a dancer, and often I would also catch her doing embroidery work on her spare time. And one time I think she even tried to get me into embroidery. She got me a beginner's embroidery kit with like Aristocrat stencils, and she made me sit and go through the process. But I wasn't in for it. I had no patience for this quiet meditative art. And so we've always shared this bond of creating, and she has always supported my creative pursuits. One time she asked me to make her a series of paintings of this magnolia tree that my mother has in our yard, so she could hang them on her wall, so she could look at them as she had her morning tea or something like that. And another time she allowed me to take photographs of her, for a series of photographs for an art showcase that I had, and I got to showcase her at an exhibition and write poems and all of these sort of things for about her. So it was nice, and she was very delighted about that. And so with her presence, I felt that I did not lack any assurance, love, or security. We'd watch classic movies together and read Rabindranath Tagore stories as I grew older into a teenager. And I remember when during one of these nights when I was visiting her in New York City, she turned around to me and she told me that out of her 7 grandchildren, she felt that I'm the one who is most like her. But now we do not talk anymore. And I don't know if I ever will see her in person again. It has been 2 years since I last saw her. My nana moved back to Bangladesh right before the pandemic hit. That's where my family is from. My mother and my nanu had a falling out last year. And with the situation, the physical distance, and with the state of the world, the void grew even more between us. We used to talk on the phone all the time about what she did that day, what she had seen, how she's feeling, what she'd seen on TV, if she's reading anything new. But after what happened, the phone calls started dwindling. And when we spoke, she wouldn't really tell me how she was doing. She didn't really tell me what her world was like. She would just focus in on what was happening between her mother and her. She wouldn't ask me how I was doing, and she would just keep spinning and spinning, pretty much complain to me about my mom, which honestly for me became a bit tiresome. So naturally, the phone call started dwindling. Her voice became more annoyed. It seemed that she was annoyed at the state of the world, annoyed at a relationship with her children, and annoyed at me, the only grandchild she ever really spoke candidly to. Apparently, my Nanu has Facebook now. Before, I couldn't have imagined the world where I wasn't the one to set up her social media accounts, and I'm not friends with her. I don't even have her new phone number. She called me once a couple of months back, and I picked up, and the first thing she said to me in a strangely flustered voice, "Have you forgotten about me?" I stayed very quiet. She asked me about 3 times, urging me for an answer. And I remember in a very sleepy and a very, very groggy voice, I said, "Yeah." She had caught me off guard as she had called me during her nighttime and my morning, and I was surprised at what had come out of my mouth, utterly shocked that I couldn't even go on with the phone conversation. But I sat there, and it was a very short form conversation, 5 minutes, whereas our phone conversations would be at least an hour long. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't think of anything to say to her. The last tidbit of wisdom that my grandmother gave me, not parted me with, she gave me was, speak your truth so you walk on the path of truth. And I took this to heart, as in I put myself into my work. I really used my work as sort of a distraction. And then but I kept thinking about my grandmother and what she had told me. So, and I dealt with all these personal relationship issues that I had with her, and I couldn't vent to her. I couldn't talk with her. And I want to repair this relationship, and I'm thinking about what I can do to move forward. And will she let me in? Will she talk to me like we did before? And I'm still figuring this out. I'm not without hope. With this special bond broken, I'm left salvaging the good memories and love that I still hold for her. I often pass by and take a good moment to stand in front of the series of photographs that I took of my grandmother. They hang on the fireplace mantle. And I see her standing there with her arms crossed, looking very confident in a red and gold sari with the red lips that I had drawn on her for those photo shoot. And I remember her telling me with like a girlish giggle, um, that she felt like like a bride on her wedding day. I wonder when it would be a good time to give her a call, no matter how uncomfortable it will be. It might not be tomorrow, but it has to be soon. Time is ticking. Thank you.